At 11:43 p.m., I stared at a group text notification that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family. Avalon Bay Resort confirmed. Can't wait for our family reunion next month. Going to be the best vacation ever. My sister-in-law Delphine had sent this message to what she'd labeled Whitmore Family Trip 2024. Everyone was included. Everyone except me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The screenshots kept flooding in. Booking confirmations, excited messages about room arrangements, discussions about dinner reservations. My brother Jasper was coordinating airport pickups. My mother, Cordelia, was planning group activities. Even my teenage nephew Kai was posting about bringing his surfboard. 23 family members, all buzzing with excitement about their exclusive getaway to the luxurious Avalon Bay Resort in Celestial Cove. I had sensed something off these past few weeks. Hushed conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. Cryptic social media posts about family time and making memories with the people who matter. My calls going to voicemail more often than usual, but I never expected the truth to land this brutally. This definitively. As I scrolled through message after message, each one felt like a knife twisting deeper. Delphine gushing about the drama-free vacation we all deserve. Jasper joking about how peaceful it would be. My mother responding with laughing emojis and saying she couldn't agree more. The irony was so perfect, so absolutely exquisite, that I actually started laughing. Not the bitter kind of laughter you'd expect from someone who just discovered their entire family had orchestrated their exclusion. No, this was the kind of laughter that comes when the universe hands you the most beautiful gift wrapped in what initially looks like devastation. You see, what my dear family didn't know, what they couldn't possibly have known because they'd made it crystal clear over the years that my business ventures were silly little hobbies, was that I owned Avalon Bay Resort. Not as a silent investor, not as a minor stakeholder. I owned it outright. Every stunning oceanfront acre, every luxury suite, every gourmet restaurant. 3 years ago when I'd tried to tell them about acquiring the property, Jasper had rolled his eyes and muttered something about me playing entrepreneur again. Delphine had actually patted my head like I was a child and said, "That's nice, dear. I'm sure it'll be a fun little project." Even Cordelia, my own mother, had sighed and changed the subject to Jasper's latest promotion at his accounting firm, so I'd stopped mentioning it, stopped sharing the milestone moments, the grand reopening after renovations, the 5-star reviews pouring in, the celebrity guests, the magazine features calling it the crown jewel of coastal luxury. Why share success with people who'd already decided you were incapable of achieving? But now, as I watched them plan their exclusive family getaway at my resort, their ignorance had become my weapon. I took a screenshot of every single message, 27 in total, each one more excited than the last about their carefully planned escape from the family member they clearly viewed as dead weight. The booking confirmation showed they'd reserved the entire East Wing, 12 premium suites for a week-long stay. The total cost, a staggering $80. The irony deepened when I opened my resort management app and saw the booking details. They'd even upgraded to the ultimate luxury package, which included private chef services, yacht excursions, and exclusive access to our private beach, all services that I'd personally designed and implemented. They were literally paying me a fortune to exclude me from their own family vacation. I forwarded the screenshots to my best friend and business attorney Raven Sinclair. If there's one thing I've learned in business, it's that when opportunity knocks, especially opportunity wrapped in betrayal, you don't answer the door empty-handed. You answer it with a lawyer. My phone buzzed immediately. "Are you kidding me right now?" Raven had texted. "Please tell me you're going to make this the most memorable family vacation in Whitmore history." Oh, I was going to do so much more than that. As I sat there in my penthouse apartment overlooking the city, I realized this wasn't just about a vacation exclusion. This was the culmination of 32 years of being the family afterthought, the sister who never quite lived up to her potential, the daughter whose achievements were dismissed as lucky breaks, or cute attempts at playing grown-up, the family member whose presence was tolerated rather than celebrated. But here's what they'd forgotten in their rush to plan their perfect Whitmore family vacation. I wasn't the same insecure girl who used to beg for their approval. I'd built an empire while they were busy dismissing. I'd turned my silly little hobby into a multi-million-dollar hospitality business. And now, without knowing it, they'd walked directly into my domain. I glanced at the time. 11. In less than 4 weeks, my entire family would arrive at Avalon Bay Resort, expecting the vacation of their dreams. They'd booked the best suites, the finest amenities, the most exclusive experiences money could buy, and I was going to give them exactly what they'd paid for, just not in the way they expected. The girl they'd excluded from family photos, forgotten at graduations, and dismissed at every holiday gathering was about to remind them why you should never underestimate the quiet one in the corners. The one who listens, who remembers, who builds her strength in silence while everyone else is busy making noise. I opened my laptop and began typing an email to my resort management team. The subject line read, "Special VIP guests arriving next month, Whitmore family booking, requires personal attention." This was going to be the most unforgettable family reunion in Whitmore history, and for the first time in my life, I was going to be the one making the rules. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was devastated that phase had lasted exactly 17 minutes. No. I stayed awake because my mind was racing with possibilities, each one more delicious than the last. While my family slept peacefully, dreaming of their exclusive getaway, I was methodically planning what would become the most educational vacation of their lives. By 6 a.m., I had downloaded every screenshot, organized them by timestamp, and created a comprehensive file labeled Whitmore Family Exclusion Evidence. 27 messages spanning 3 weeks of plan. Every excited emoji, every casual dismissal of my existence, every confirmation that I was the problem they were so eager to escape. The most telling message came from my brother Jasper at 2:14 a.m. Apparently, I wasn't the only one having trouble sleeping. Honestly, I'm just looking forward to a vacation where we don't have to pretend to be interested in her latest business venture, or listen to her talk about properties and investments like she's some kind of mogul. This trip is about family, real family. Delphine had responded with fire emojis, and finally someone said it. I saved that particular exchange in a special folder. At 7:30 a.m., my phone rang. Raven had clearly been thinking about this all night too. "Tell me you have a plan," she said without preamble. "I'm working on it," I replied, sipping my coffee while reviewing the resort's booking system. "But first I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with legally." "Legally? Girl, you own the place. You can do whatever you want. Within reason," I cautioned. "I'm not trying to destroy my business reputation for the sake of family drama. This needs to be educational." Raven laughed. "Educational? I like that. What did you have in mind?" I pulled up the Whitmore booking details on my computer. They've booked 12 suites in the East Wing for 7 days. Ultimate luxury package. Private chef, yacht excursions, spa treatments, the works. They're paying premium prices for premium service. And they're going to get exactly what they paid for. Every single amenity, every promised service, delivered to absolute perfection. I'm going to be the most attentive professional resort owner they've ever encountered. There was silence on the other end. "That's not what I expected. The best revenge isn't stooping to their level, Rave. It's rising so far above it that they have to crane their necks to see you." I scrolled through my staff directory. I'm going to show them exactly who they excluded from their family vacation. After hanging up with Raven, I called an emergency meeting with my core management team. Avalon Bay Resort employed 43 people, and every single one of them took pride in delivering exceptional service. But this booking would require something extra. My general manager, Phoenix Torres, arrived first. Phoenix had been with me since day one, back when we were renovating this place from a rundown beachfront motel into the luxury destination it had become. If anyone understood the significance of this booking, It would be him, the Whitmore family, I said, sliding the booking confirmation across my desk. I need you to personally oversee every aspect of their stay. Phoenix glanced at the paperwork, then at me. Whitmore, why does that name sound familiar? It's my family name. His eyebrows shot up. Your family? The ones who think I'm a failure playing dress up as a businesswoman. Yes, those ones. I leaned back in my chair. They've booked a week-long family reunion here, all of them. Except me. Phoenix stared at the booking details, then started laughing. You're kidding me. I never kid about business, Phoenix. This is going to be the most professionally executed week in Avalon Bay's history. Every service delivered flawlessly, every expectation exceeded, every detail perfect. And they have no idea you own this place. None whatsoever. In their minds, I'm still the family disappointment, who plays at being an entrepreneur. My head chef Sage Blackthorne arrived next, followed by Marina Kelp, our spa director, and Driftwood Dave, our activities coordinator. I briefed them all on the situation, watching their expressions shift from confusion to amazement, to barely contained glee. So let me get this straight, Sage said slowly. Your family excluded you from their vacation, booked it at your resort without knowing you own it, and you want us to give them the best service of their lives. Exactly, boss, Dave chimed in. That's either the classiest revenge I've ever heard of, or you're a saint. I prefer to think of it as a teaching moment, I replied. They're about to learn what they've been dismissing all these years. Marina raised her hand. What about interactions with you? Do they think you're just staff? That was the million-dollar question. I'll be on property managing operations as usual. If they see me, I'm simply the owner ensuring their satisfaction. Professional, courteous, and completely in control of their entire vacation experience. Phoenix grinned. This is going to be beautiful. I spent the rest of the morning pulling the reservation details and cross-referencing them with my family's preferences and habits. Information I'd gathered over 32 years of being overlooked at family gatherings. Jasper was lactose intolerant, but too proud to mention it. Delphine had a severe shellfish allergy. My mother Cordelia needed extra firm pillows for her back. Nephew Kai was vegetarian but didn't like his family knowing it. Every detail, every preference, every little quirk I'd observed during years of being the invisible family member. It all went into a comprehensive guest profile that would ensure their stay was absolutely perfect. The irony wasn't lost on me. All those years of being ignored had made me the ultimate observer. I knew my family better than they knew each other, and certainly better than they knew me. My assistant, River Ashworth, knocked on my office door. The Whitmore booking confirmation email is ready for your review. I read through the beautifully crafted message, welcoming the Whitmore family to Avalon Bay Resort, detailing their itinerary and expressing how honored we were to host their family reunion. It was signed by Phoenix as general manager, with no mention of ownership or my involvement. Perfect, I said. Send it. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself looking forward to their arrival with an anticipation I hadn't felt in years. Not because I was planning to humiliate them, though there would certainly be moments of cosmic justice, but because I was finally going to show them who I really was. For 32 years I'd been seeking their approval, their recognition, their acceptance. Now, for the first time in my life, I didn't need any of those things. I had built something magnificent without them, and they were about to pay me handsomely for the privilege of experiencing it. The excluded family member was about to become their host, their service provider, and ultimately their teacher. And the best part, they still had no idea the lesson was coming. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange kind of peace. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't checking my phone obsessively for family updates, or feeling that familiar pang of exclusion when I saw their social media posts. Instead, I watched their vacation planning unfold with the detached interest of someone observing a fascinating social experiment. Delphine posted daily countdowns on her Instagram story, 18 days until family paradise, accompanied by photos of resort amenities she'd found online. My amenities, though she had no idea. Jasper shared articles about Celestial Cove's hidden gems on Facebook, tagging family members with comments like, "Can't wait to explore this with my real family." Even my mother started a Pinterest board called Whitmore Family Memories, filled with vacation outfit ideas and beach photography inspiration. The most revealing moment came during what I now recognized as their final planning call. I wasn't invited, obviously, but my nephew Kai accidentally sent me a voice message meant for the family group chat. 15 minutes of pure, unfiltered honesty about how they really saw me. I'm just saying, Delphine's voice came through clearly. This trip is going to be so much more relaxing without her constantly trying to prove how successful she is. Like, we get it. You bought some property, but you don't have to make everything about your business venture. Jasper's laugh was sharp. Remember last Christmas when she kept talking about her resort, as if anyone believed she actually owned a real resort? It's probably some timeshare scam she fell for. Now, my mother's voice chimed in, though her tone carried that familiar condescending edge I'd heard my entire life. She's trying her best. We should be supportive of her hobbies. 32 years old, and my mother still referred to my multi-million-dollar business empire as hobbies. But the comment that truly crystallized everything came from my cousin Celeste, Delphine's sister. Honestly, I think excluding her was the kindest thing we could do. She would have spent the whole week feeling inferior and trying to compete with everyone's actual accomplishments. This way she can't embarrass herself or make us all uncomfortable. I played that recording 3 times, not because it hurt, I was beyond that now, but because it perfectly encapsulated the family dynamic I'd been too close to see clearly. They genuinely believed they were protecting me from my own inadequacy. In their minds, I was a perpetual child playing dress-up in the adult world, and they were the benevolent grown-ups shielding me from reality. The psychology was fascinating. Here I was, the owner of a resort worth $15 million, employing dozens of people featured in Coastal Living magazine's top 10 luxury destinations, and they saw me as the family charity case who needed to be managed rather than included. That night, I called my therapist, Doc Juniper Vale. I'd started seeing her 2 years ago when I'd first begun to suspect that my family's constant criticism wasn't actually about helping me improve. It was about keeping me small enough to make them feel bigger. "How are you feeling about all of this?" Vale asked after I'd filled her in on the vacation situation. "Surprisingly calm," I admitted. "For the first time I can see them clearly without the fog of wanting their approval." "And what do you see?" I thought about it carefully. "I see people who need someone to look down on to feel good about themselves. I see a family system that's built on hierarchy, where my role has always been to be the cautionary tale, the one who never quite made it so everyone else can feel successful by comparison." That's a significant realization. The weird part is, I'm not even angry anymore. I'm almost grateful. This exclusion forced me to stop seeking their validation and start seeing my own worth clearly. Dr. Vale was quiet for a moment. "What about your daughter Luna? How is she processing being excluded from family events?" Luna, my 8-year-old daughter who adored her cousins and couldn't understand why Grandma Cordelia had stopped inviting us to family gatherings. Luna, who had inherited my entrepreneurial spirit and was already selling friendship bracelets to her classmates with more business acumen than some adults I knew. "She's hurt," I admitted. "She keeps asking why Uncle Jasper doesn't want to see her anymore. I've been telling her they're just busy, but she's smart. She knows something's changed." "How do you think their exclusion affects her sense of family and belonging?" That was the question that cut deep. I could handle being dismissed and underestimated. I'd built a successful life despite their doubts. But Luna deserved better. She deserved a family that celebrated her creativity instead of viewing it as a threat to their established order. "She started calling my business team her real family," I said softly. "Phoenix taught her to make paper airplanes last week when I brought her to the office. River lets her help organize files. Sage is teaching her to cook. She gets more encouragement from my employees than from her own relatives. That says something important about the environment you've created at your business." It did. Without realizing it, I'd built the kind of supportive, nurturing community I'd always wanted from my family. My staff celebrated each other's successes, collaborated instead of competed, and treated everyone with respect regardless of their position in the hierarchy. The irony struck me then. My family was about to spend a week experiencing the culture I'd created, the hospitality philosophy I'd developed, the attention to detail I'd perfected. They would be surrounded by people who embodied the values they'd never shown me: genuine care, professional respect, and enthusiastic service. They would receive the kind of treatment I'd always hoped for from them: delivered by strangers who understood my vision better than my own blood relatives ever had. That weekend, Luna and I drove out to Avalon Bay Resort for our monthly property walkthrough. It was something we'd done since she was tiny, my way of including her in the business, and teaching her about responsibility and pride in one's work. "Mama," she said as we walked through the East Wing where the Whitmore family would be staying. "These rooms are really pretty." "Who's coming to stay here?" "Some guests who think they're very important," I said, straightening a picture frame in the hallway. "Are they nice guests?" I considered this. "They're educational guests." Luna nodded solemnly, as if this made perfect sense. "Will you make sure they have everything they need?" "Absolutely. We're going to take better care of them than anyone has ever taken care of them before, even better than their own families." The innocence of the question hit me like a gentle revelation. "Especially better than their own families, sweetheart." As we finished our walkthrough, I realized that this upcoming week wasn't just about showing my family who I really was. It was about demonstrating the kind of love and attention they'd never been capable of giving. They would experience genuine care and service, the kind of environment where people are valued and celebrated rather than diminished. Whether they learned anything from it remained to be seen, but for the first time in my life, their education wasn't my responsibility. My responsibility was to be exactly who I'd become: a successful businesswoman, a loving mother, and a person who had built something beautiful despite being raised by people who couldn't see her value. The excluded daughter was about to welcome her family home to her home and show them what real hospitality looked like. The first test came unexpectedly during Luna's birthday party planning. I had decided to host her 9th birthday celebration at Avalon Bay Resort, not as some grand gesture, but because Luna had specifically requested to have her party where Mama works with all the nice people. She wanted to invite her 3 best friends from school, and had asked if Phoenix could make his famous chocolate lava cake. I sent a simple text to the family group chat, not the exclusive Whitmore family trip to one, but the original family group that technically still included me. "Luna's 9th birthday party this Saturday at 2 p.m. Avalon Bay Resort, 147 Seaside Boulevard, Celestial. Would love to have family there to celebrate with her." The response was swift and telling. Jasper replied within minutes. "Sorry, we're all super busy with vacation prep. Maybe next time." Delphine added, "Oh no, that's the same day as my spa appointment for the trip. Range." My mother's response came an hour later. "Darling, Celestial Cove is such a long drive and we have so much to do before our vacation. I'm sure Luna will understand. Maybe we can celebrate when we get back." But it was Celestia's message that revealed their true colors. "Wait, didn't you say this was at some resort? How are you affording that? Are you putting yourself in debt for a child's birthday party? That seems irresponsible." I screenshotted every response before typing my reply. "No worries at all. Luna and I will have a wonderful time with the people who actually show up for her. Enjoy your spa appointment, Delphine." Within an hour my phone started buzzing. Jasper called for. "Look, I didn't mean we couldn't come," he said, his tone already defensive. "It's just that Celestial Cove is really far, and we're trying to save money for the vacation." "Celestial Cove is 45 minutes away, Jasper. You drive farther than that to get to your favorite golf course." "That's different. This is just, why are you having it at some fancy resort anyway? Isn't that a little pretentious for a 9-year-old?" I smiled, looking out at the ocean view from my office window. "Luna specifically requested it. She loves it here." "Here? You talk like you work there or something." "I do work here." There was a pause. "Like, as an employee?" The condescension in his voice was breathtaking. Even when I told him I worked at a luxury resort, his first assumption was that I was in some menial position, something like that. I said sweetly, "So you won't be able to make it?" Look, we'll try to stop by, okay? But we can't stay long." I hung up knowing they wouldn't come. And I was right. Saturday arrived bright and sunny. Luna's 3 school friends, Willow, Sage, and Ocean. Celestial Cove was very much a bohemian beach town, arrived with their parents who were genuinely impressed by the venue. Phoenix had outdone himself with the chocolate lava cake. complete with sparkler candle. Marina had arranged for the girls to have mini facials with cucumber slices and gentle face masks. Dave had set up a treasure hunt along the private beach. At 2:30 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Jasper. Running late, but we'll be there soon. At 3:15 p.m., traffic is terrible, might be another hour. At 4:00 p.m., Luna's party is probably winding down now. Tell her happy birthday from all of us. They never showed. My daughter's 9th birthday party, and not a single family member could be bothered to drive 45 minutes to celebrate with her. But here's what happened instead. Luna had the time of her life. The resort staff treated her like absolute royalty. Chef Sage taught her to pipe frosting roses. Phoenix let her help mix virgin cocktails for the parents. Marina painted intricate designs on all the girls' nails. Dave gave them a private boat ride to see dolphins. When one of the other parents, a local artist named Coral Tudwell, asked me how I'd managed to book such an incredible venue, I simply said, I have connections. Well, your connections clearly adore Luna, Coral observed, watching my daughter laugh as Phoenix taught her to flip pancakes in the kitchen. Look how they're treating her like she's their own family. That's because she is, I thought. This place, these people, they were more family to Luna than the relatives who shared her DNA. The real boundary test came the following Tuesday. I was reviewing final preparations for the Whitmore family arrival when my mother called. Darling, I've been thinking about Luna's party, Cordelia began, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she wanted to sound caring while delivering criticism. Don't you think it's a bit much to expose her to such extravagance? Children need to learn the value of money, not expect luxury at every turn. She had 3 friends over for cake and games. Mom, how is that extravagant? At a resort, though, and I heard from Delphine that you actually work there. As what, exactly? Here it was, the perfect opportunity to test exactly how they saw me. I'm involved in the operations, I said carefully. Operations. She repeated the word like it tasted bad. Darling, I hope you're not doing anything manual. Your father and I raised you to aim higher than service work. As if there was something shameful about the honest labor that kept their future vacation paradise running smoothly. As if the people who would be catering to their every need for a week were somehow beneath consideration. The work is very fulfilling, I said evenly. I'm good at what I do. I'm sure you are, sweetheart. But you have a daughter to think about. Maybe it's time to consider something more stable, more traditional. Jasper mentioned his firm is hiring administrative assistants. Administrative assistant. She wanted me to work for my brother, filing papers and answering phones, because that was more stable than running a successful resort. I'll consider it, I lied smoothly. Wonderful. Oh, and darling, about this vacation we're taking, I hope you don't feel bad about not being included. It's just that family dynamics can be complicated, and sometimes it's better for everyone if certain personalities don't clash. Certain personalities. I was a personality that clashed with family harmony. Apparently. I understand completely, I said, and for the first time, I genuinely did. After hanging up, I sat in my office for a long moment, processing the conversation. They couldn't even celebrate my daughter's birthday, but they could lecture me about my life choices. They viewed my successful business as embarrassing employment, but they'd happily spend thousands of dollars at luxury resorts owned by strangers. The boundaries were crystal clear now. I wasn't family to them. I was a project, someone to be managed, corrected and kept at arm's length until I became the person they thought I should be. Phoenix knocked on my door. Everything okay, boss? You look like you're plotting something. Not plotting, I said, turning back to my computer where the Whitmore family's detailed itinerary glowed on the screen. Planning. There's a difference. What's the difference? I smiled, thinking about my mother's lecture about stable employment, and Jasper's assumption that I was some kind of resort employee. Plotting is about revenge. Planning is about education. Phoenix grinned. And which one are we doing? Both, I admitted. But we're calling it plan. He laughed. I can't wait to meet your family. Trust me, I said. reviewing their wine preferences and dietary restrictions one more time. The feeling won't be mutual. 3 days before the Whitmore family's arrival, I called an all-hands meeting. Every department head, every key staff member, every person who would interact with my family during their stay, gathered in the resort's main conference room. The tension in the air was palpable, not because anyone was nervous, but because they were excited. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, standing at the head of the polished mahogany table that overlooked the pristine beach where my family would soon be lounging. "We're about to host the most important guests in Avalon Bay Resort's history." Phoenix raised an eyebrow. "More important than when that tech billionaire brought his entire extended family for a month. More important than the movie premiere after-party we hosted," I confirmed. "More important than the royal family's cousin who stayed here last spring. These guests are going to receive the absolute pinnacle of our service excellence." River, my assistant, was taking notes furiously. "Should we arrange for additional staff? Extended hours? Special protocol?" "No additional staff needed," I said, pulling up the detailed dossier I'd compiled on each family member. "But yes to special protocols. I want to share some background on each guest, so you can personalize their experience." I clicked to the first slide. Jasper Whitmore, 34, accountant. Lactose intolerant but too proud to mention it. Prefers his coffee black with exactly 1 sugar cube. Gets sunburned easily but refuses to admit it. Has a secret weakness for rom-com movies but only watches them when no one's around. Sage, my head chef, was already taking note. "I can prepare lactose-free alternatives for all meals without making it obvious. Maybe some digestive teas as welcome amenities." "Perfect." Next, Delphine Whitmore, 29. Social media influencer with 12,000 followers, severely allergic to shellfish. Obsessed with getting the perfect Instagram shot but gets frustrated when things don't look as good in person as they do online. Secretly insecure about her engagement ring being smaller than her friends. Marina leaned forward. "I could arrange for some photo-worthy spa treatment. Maybe create some Instagram-ready moments around the property." Excellent thinking. Now, Cordelia Whitmore, 58, retired teacher, chronic back pain, needs firm pillows and support, loves to feel important and knowledgeable, will try to manage everyone else's vacation experience, has strong opinions about proper etiquette and service standards. Dave chuckled. "Sounds like someone who'll have thoughts about how we do things." "Oh, she will. Which is why I want everything to be so flawlessly executed that she can't find a single fault. She should feel like she's the most important guest we've ever served." I continued through the entire family roster. Kai, Jasper's 16-year-old son, was secretly vegetarian but didn't want his meat-loving father to know. Celeste, Delphine's sister, was going through a messy divorce and desperately needed to feel pampered and beautiful. Uncle Harlow, Cordelia's brother, was a retired Navy officer who respected precision and punctuality above all else. "The key," I explained, "is that each of these people should feel like we've somehow read their minds, their unspoken preferences anticipated, their secret needs met, their desires fulfilled before they even realize they have them." Storm Waverly, our head of housekeeping, raised her hand. "This level of personalization, it's impressive. How do you know all these details?" 32 years of observation," I said simply. 32 years of being the family member who listened when no one thought I was paying attention. Raven had arrived midway through the presentation and was listening from the back of the room. When I finished briefing the staff, she approached the podium. "If I may," she said, "I'd like to add some legal context to this gathering." I nodded for her to continue. "What you're witnessing here," Raven addressed the room, "is not just exceptional hospitality planning. This is a masterclass in business ethics and personal integrity. Your boss has every right to be angry, hurt, or vindictive about this situation. Instead, she's choosing to demonstrate the highest standards of professionalism." Phoenix smiled. "It's pretty incredible, actually. They excluded her from the family vacation, so she's going to give them the best vacation of their lives." "Exactly," Raven continued. "And from a legal standpoint, everything we're doing is not only appropriate but exemplary. We're providing services that exceed the contracted expectations. We're personalizing guest experiences based on publicly available information and observable preference. We're demonstrating the kind of hospitality excellence that builds lasting business reputation. River looked confused. But what about, I mean, isn't there some element of personal satisfaction in all this? I took back the microphone. Of course there is, but the satisfaction isn't coming from making them miserable. It's coming from showing them exactly who I am and what I'm capable of. They think I'm the family failure who works at some resort. They're about to discover that I'm the family success who owns the resort. Sage grinned. When do they find out? They don't, I said firmly. Unless they ask directly, we never volunteer that information. If they assume I'm staff, we don't correct them. If they treat me like an employee, I respond with perfect professionalism. The revelation, when it comes, should feel inevitable rather than orchestrated. Marina raised her hand. What if they're rude to you? What if they're dismissive or condescending? Then you'll witness the most polished, professional, unflappable service delivery of your careers, I replied. Remember, we have something they don't. We know exactly what's happening. They're walking into a situation where they think they hold all the power, but they're actually completely dependent on our goodwill for their entire vacation experience. Dave laughed. It's like that old saying, be kind to people on your way up because you'll meet them again on your way down, except they never learned the first part. Speaking of which, Phoenix interjected. What about Luna? How do we handle her being here while they're here? I'd been dreading this question. Luna will be staying with my friend Coral for the week. She doesn't need to witness whatever unfolds here, and I won't use my daughter as a prop in this situation. River looked surprised. You're not going to introduce her to her extended family. They had the chance to be part of her life at her birthday party, I said quietly. They chose not to show up. I'm not forcing that connection now. The room fell silent for a moment as the implications sank in. Raven stepped forward again. There's one more thing I want everyone to understand. What's happening here isn't just about family drama. This is about the power of excellence in the face of dismissal. Your boss has built something remarkable here, and her family has spent years minimizing that achievement. This week they're going to experience firsthand the culture of care and attention to detail that she's created. Storm nodded slowly. So we're not just serving guests, we're representing her vision, her values, her standards. Exactly, I confirm. Every interaction they have with you reflects the business philosophy I've developed. Every meal Sage prepares demonstrates the quality standards I've established. Every detail Marina arranges in the spa shows the attention to wellness I prioritize. Every activity Dave coordinates reflects the guest experience I've designed. Phoenix stood up. Boss, I've got to say, this is either going to be the most satisfying week of your professional life or the most challenging. Probably both, I admit. But here's what I know for certain. At the end of this week, I'll be proud of how we handled ourselves. Whatever they think of me after this, I'll know we gave them the absolute best of what Avalon Bay Resort has to offer. As the meeting dispersed, staff members lingered to ask specific questions about preferences and protocols. The energy in the room was electric. Not with anticipation of drama, but with professional pride. These people understood that they were about to showcase their skills at the highest level. Raven stayed behind as the room emptied. You know, she said thoughtfully, I've been your lawyer for 3 years, and I've seen you handle difficult clients, challenging negotiations and crisis situations. But I've never seen you this calm before a potentially explosive situation. That's because this isn't explosive, I replied, gathering my notes. This is just clarifying. Clarifying. I looked out at the beach where my family would be relaxing in 3 days, completely unaware that they were about to become students in a masterclass they didn't know they needed. They're about to learn the difference between who they think I am and who I actually am. The question isn't whether they'll be surprised. The question is whether they'll be capable of learning from the surprise. Friday morning arrived with crystal blue skies and gentle ocean breezes. The kind of perfect beach weather that made Avalon Bay Resort's promotional photos look almost modest by comparison. I stood in my office at 7 a.m., watching the grounds crew put finishing touches on the already immaculate landscaping, knowing that in 4 hours the Whitmore family convoy would pull into our circular driveway. My phone buzzed with a text from Luna, who was having breakfast at Coral's house. Mama, are the mean relatives coming today? I smiled despite myself. Luna had never called them mean relatives before, but children have an uncanny ability to distill complex situations into simple truth. I texted back, the confused relatives are arriving today. Remember, we talked about how sometimes grown-ups don't understand important things. Okay, will you tell me about it later? Maybe when you're older, sweetheart. I'm older than I was yesterday. That was my daughter, always finding the logical loophole. Much older. Have fun with Coral today. At 9:30 a.m., Phoenix appeared in my doorway with 2 cups of coffee and a knowing smile. Ready for the most interesting check-in of our career? Define ready, I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. The East Wing has been transformed into a 5-star paradise. Sage has prepared welcome amenities that would make the Ritz jealous. Marina has arranged for spa experiences that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Dave has a week's worth of activities planned that would exhaust a professional athlete. And Storm has ensured that every towel is folded with mathematical precision. I nodded, reviewing the arrival schedule on my tablet. 3 cars. Jasper and his family in the first vehicle, arriving at approximately 11 a.m., Delphine, Celeste, and my mother in the second. 30 minutes later, Uncle Harlow and his wife Iris driving separately because, and I quote from the reservation notes, Harlow doesn't trust anyone else's driving. And you'll be where during check-in, exactly where I always am during VIP arrivals, overseeing operations, ensuring guest satisfaction and maintaining the professional standard that's made this resort successful. Phoenix grinned. In other words, doing your job while they figure out you're not just doing a job. At 10:45 a.m., I positioned myself in the lobby, ostensibly reviewing occupancy reports but actually preparing for the first moment of what would either be the most educational week of my family's lives, or the most challenging week of mine. The first car, a black SUV that Jasper had clearly washed for the occasion, pulled up precisely at 11 a.m. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched our valet team spring into action with the choreographed efficiency that made Avalon Bay Resort famous. Jasper emerged from the driver's seat, wearing khakis and a polo shirt that screamed, "I'm on vacation," but still professional. His wife Fern, whom I'd met exactly 3 times in 7 years of family gatherings, stepped out in designer resort wear that probably cost more than our housekeeping staff made in a month. Teenage Kai unfolded himself from the back seat, already looking around with the critical eye of a generation that had grown up rating their experiences on social media. I watched through the window as they paused at the entrance, clearly impressed despite themselves. Avalon Bay Resort had that effect on people. The architecture was designed to take your breath away, with soaring ceilings, natural stone and glass walls that made the boundary between indoor and outdoor spaces almost invisible. They entered the lobby and I heard Fern's voice carry across the marble floors. "Oh my God, Jasper, this place is incredible. How did you find it?" "Delphine found it online," Jasper replied, his tone carrying that particular satisfaction of someone who believed they'd discovered something exclusive. "Apparently it's one of the best-kept secrets on the coast." I suppressed a smile. Best-kept secret. If only they knew they were standing in a resort that had been featured in Architectural Digest, Travel Plus Leisure and Condé Nast Traveler in the past 2 years alone. Phoenix approached them from behind the reception desk, resplendent in his perfectly tailored navy suit. "Mr. and Miss Whitmore, welcome to Avalon Bay Resort. I'm Phoenix Torres, General Manager. We're absolutely delighted to have you with us." I observed from across the lobby as Phoenix launched into his welcome routine, the one that had earned us a 4.9-star rating on every hospitality platform. Jasper's posture straightened as he realized he was being treated like true VIP guests. Fern was already taking photos of the lobby's stunning ocean view. "Your suite in the East Wing has been prepared according to your preferences," Phoenix continued smoothly. "We've arranged for a selection of lactose-free options to be available throughout your stay, and your coffee service will feature our signature single-cube sugar presentation." I watched Jasper's face change from polite attention to genuine surprise. He hadn't mentioned his lactose intolerance in his reservation. The fact that we knew about it and had proactively accommodated it was the first hint that this wouldn't be an ordinary hotel experience. "How did you? I mean, I didn't mention," Jasper stammered. "We pride ourselves on anticipating our guests' needs," Phoenix replied with professional warmth. "Our goal is to ensure your comfort without you having to ask for special accommodations." The second car arrived as Phoenix was explaining the resort's amenities. Through the window, I watched my mother emerge with the regal bearing she'd cultivated over decades of community theater and volunteer board positions. Delphine bounced out with influencer-ready energy, immediately posing for selfies against the resort's dramatic entrance. Celeste, who looked like she'd been crying behind her oversized sunglasses, followed more slowly. This was the moment I'd been anticipating and dreading in equal measure. I stepped forward from my position by the windows, approaching the reception area with the confident stride of someone who belonged there because I did. "Good morning," I said with professional warmth, addressing the group as they gathered in the lobby. "I'm here to ensure that everything meets your expectations during your stay." My mother turned first, and I watched the recognition dawn on her face in slow motion: confusion, then surprise, then something that looked almost like embarrassment. "Darling," Cordelia exclaimed, her voice carrying that particular pitch she used when she was flustered but trying to maintain social composure. "What a lovely coincidence. Are you working here?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Every member of my staff within earshot turned slightly, awaiting my response. This was it, the opening gambit of the week-long chess match I'd been preparing for. "I'm involved in ensuring our guests receive exceptional service," I replied calmly, which was completely true while revealing absolutely nothing. Delphine looked around the opulent lobby, then back at me. "This place must pay really well if you can afford to stay here yourself." "I'm not staying here," I said with a slight smile. "I live nearby." Jasper was still processing the situation. "You work here, like as staff?" The condescension in his voice was palpable. Even Phoenix noticed it, his professional smile becoming slightly more fit. "I work here," I confirmed, "ensuring that guests like yourselves have an unforgettable experience." "Well," my mother said, her voice brightening artificially, "how wonderful that you have such a nice position. The lobby is certainly impressive." "Thank you," I replied. "We take great pride in maintaining the highest standards." Celeste, who had been quiet until now, looked around nervously. Are we allowed to be here? I mean, if you work here, is it weird that we're guests?" It was a fair question, and one that revealed more emotional intelligence than I'd given her credit for. "Not at all," I assured her. "Professional boundaries are very important in hospitality. Your experience as guests will be completely separate from any personal relationships. My job is to ensure you receive the exceptional service that Avalon Bay Resort is known for." Uncle Harlow chose that moment to make his entrance, military bearing intact despite his 72 years. He surveyed the lobby with the practiced eye of someone who'd inspected facilities around the world, then nodded approvingly. "Outstanding," he announced to no one in particular. "First-rate operation." Phoenix stepped smoothly back into his role. "If you'll allow me to show you to your accommodations, I believe you'll find everything has been arranged to exceed your expectations." As the group began to move toward the elevators, my mother lingered behind. "Sweetheart," she said quietly, "I hope this isn't awkward for you. We certainly didn't know you worked here when we booked." "It's not awkward at all," I replied honestly. "I'm looking forward to showing you what we're capable of here." She smiled uncertainly, clearly not sure how to interpret my response. "Well, we're very grateful for any special attention you might be able to arrange. Every guest receives special attention here," I said. "That's our standard, not an exception." As my family disappeared into the elevator with Phoenix, I remained in the lobby, processing what had just occurred. The opening gambit was complete. They now knew I worked at the resort, but had no idea what that actually meant. They were expecting employee discounts and inside favors, not realizing they were about to receive something far more valuable: a demonstration of the business acumen they'd spent decades dismissing. My phone buzzed with a text from River. "Phase 1 complete. The Eagle has landed, and they have no idea they're in the Eagle's nest." I smiled, straightening my shoulders and preparing for round 2 of the most important guest experience of my career. By lunchtime, the Whitmore family had settled into their suites, and the real education was beginning. I monitored their experience through our comprehensive guest services system, watching as each carefully planned element of their stay unfolded exactly as intended. Jasper had already called the front desk twice, first to rave about the room's impossible ocean view, than to ask how they'd known to stock his minibar with lactose-free milk alternative. River fielded both calls with practiced professionalism, explaining that guest satisfaction was our highest priority, while revealing nothing about the source of their personalized service. Delphine's Instagram stories were already flooding with content. She'd posted 17 photos in 2 hours, each captioned with increasingly superlative descriptions. OMG, this place is insane. How is this even real? Living my best life in paradise. What she didn't realize was that every candid shot she was taking had been carefully orchestrated by Marina, who had strategically placed photo-worthy elements throughout the East Wing. The first real test came at 1:30 p.m. when the family gathered for lunch at our oceanfront restaurant. I positioned myself at a corner table with my laptop, ostensibly working on resort business, but actually observing their first encounter with Sage's culinary artistry. Cordelia was holding court at their reserved table, the one with the best view in the restaurant. I must say, she was telling Uncle Harlow loudly enough for surrounding tables to hear, the service here is exceptional. They seem to anticipate our every need. Military precision, Harlow agreed, nodding approvingly at the way their water glasses never emptied and bread appeared without being requested. Proper training shows. Celeste was studying the menu with the focused attention of someone trying to decide if she could afford to eat here. These prices aren't too bad, she murmured to Delphine. I expected a place like this to be more expensive. That was because they were receiving our local resident pricing, a discount I'd implemented months ago for community members, but had quietly extended to the Whitmore booking. They had no idea they were paying 30% less than our standard rates. Fern was taking photos of every dish as it arrived, clearly planning her own social media documentation. This presentation is like artwork, she gushed to Jasper. How did you find this place again? Delphine researched it, Jasper replied, cutting into the salmon that Sage had specifically prepared without any dairy components. Though I'm starting to think we got lucky with the timing, this level of service usually requires connections. I smiled behind my laptop screen. They were experiencing connections, all right, just not the kind they imagined. The real moment of truth came when young Kai quietly asked the server if there were any vegetarian options that could be modified to look like regular dishes. He was trying to maintain his secret plant-based diet without drawing his father's attention or criticism. I watched the server, one of our newer team members named Ocean, handle the request with the briefest moment of uncertainty before remembering our pre-service brief. Absolutely, Ocean said smoothly. Our chef has prepared several options that I think you'll enjoy. Would you like me to describe them, or would you prefer I bring a selection for you to choose from? Selection would be great, Kai said, relief flooding his teenage feature. Within minutes, Sage had sent out a beautiful array of plant-based dishes artfully presented to look substantial and appealing. Kai's eyes lit up as Ocean described each option in terms that made them sound sophisticated rather than restrictive. Jasper, engrossed in conversation with Harlow about yacht specifications, barely noticed his son's meal choice. That's when Delphine noticed me. Oh my gosh, she said, loud enough to interrupt the table's conversation. Look, there's your sister. The entire family turned to stare at me. I looked up from my laptop with the appropriate expression of someone who had just been noticed by acquaintances while trying to work. How funny, my mother said, waving me over with the imperious gesture of someone accustomed to summoning service staff. Come say hello properly, darling. I closed my laptop and approached their table, aware that every other diner in the restaurant was now watching this interaction with curious interest. I hope everything is meeting your expectations, I said professionally, addressing the table as a group rather than acknowledging the family relationship. It's extraordinary, Cordelia gushed. Simply extraordinary. You must give our compliments to the chef. I'll be sure to pass that along, I replied, making a mental note to tell Sage that his lactose-free salmon had earned rave reviews. Jasper looked around the restaurant, then back at me. So what exactly is your position here? You seem to have some influence. The question was loaded with assumption. In Jasper's worldview, people either had real jobs with clear hierarchies, or they had service positions that could be easily categorized and dismissed. The idea that someone might own the entire operation was outside his conceptual framework. I coordinate guest experiences, I said, which was absolutely true. I make sure visitors receive the level of service they expect from a property of this caliber. Well, you're certainly good at it, Fern interjected. This has been like staying at a five-star resort in Europe. The attention to detail is incredible. Thank you. We pride ourselves on exceeding expectations. Uncle Harlow fixed me with his penetrating military stare. Young lady, I've stayed at luxury accommodations around the world. This operation demonstrates exceptional leadership and vision. Someone here knows what they're doing. I appreciate that feedback, I replied evenly. Leadership and vision are certainly priorities in our hospitality philosophy. Delphine was practically bouncing in her seat. Can you get us reservations for that sunset yacht cruise? I heard it books up months in advance. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, the first direct request for special treatment based on our family connection. All guests have access to the same booking system, I said with a professional smile. However, I can have our activities coordinator speak with you about availability and options. Celeste looked confused. But couldn't you just... don't you have some kind of employee benefits or connection? Our staff receives many benefits, I replied carefully, but our guest services operate on a strict fairness policy. Every visitor receives the same opportunities and consideration. I watched Jasper's face as he processed. He'd expected me to leverage whatever minimal influence I had as a resort employee to get his family special treatment. The idea that I might maintain professional boundaries, that I might actually have principles that couldn't be compromised by family pressure, clearly hadn't occurred to him. Well, my mother said with a slight edge to her voice, I suppose we'll work through proper channels then. That's always best, I agreed. It ensures consistent service for all our guests. As I excused myself to return to my table, I heard Harlow's voice carry, that girl has proper professional standards. Rare to see that level of integrity in young people today. I settled back at my corner table and reopened my laptop, but I was really watching the family process what had just happened. They'd expected me to either bend rules or reveal that I had no real authority to bend. Instead, I demonstrated professional competence and ethical boundaries, qualities they'd never associated with me before. My phone buzzed with a text from Dave. Yacht cruise booking just came through from the Whitmore table, full sunset package for 8 people. Should I give them the premium experience? I typed back, give them the ultimate experience. Best captain, premium refreshments, private photography service, extended route. They're paying for luxury. Make sure they get it. Got it. They have no idea what they're in for. That was the beauty of the trap I'd constructed. My family was expecting mediocre service and employee favors. Instead, they were receiving world-class hospitality and professional excellence. Every interaction was designed to subtly challenge their assumptions about my capabilities, while exceeding their expectations for the resort experience. As I watched them finish their lunch, animatedly planning their afternoon activities, I realized they were already changed. The dismissive attitudes they'd brought with them were softening in the face of consistent competence and attention to detail. They were experiencing what I'd built here, not just a business, but a culture of excellence. Whether they were capable of connecting that culture to the woman they'd excluded from their family vacation remained to be seen. But for the first time in 32 years, they were seeing my work up close, and they couldn't dismiss it as lucky breaks or cute attempts at playing grown-up. The education was well underway. The first major shift in family dynamics came Tuesday evening, during what was supposed to be a simple dinner at our signature restaurant, Azure. I was in my office reviewing the next day's guest activities, when Phoenix called with an urgent You need to know what just happened in the dining room, he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Your family, well, let's just say they revealed their true colors. I saved my work and headed downstairs immediately. Phoenix met me at the restaurant entrance, his usually composed demeanor showing cracks. Storm was serving their table, he began, referring to our head of housekeeping, who occasionally helped with dining service during busy periods. She brought them their appetizers, and your mother... God, I can't even repeat what she said. Through the restaurant's glass partition, I could see my family at their table, the atmosphere visibly tense. Storm was nowhere to be seen. Tell me exactly what happened. Phoenix took a deep breath. Storm brought out their appetizer course, the one Sage specially prepared with all their dietary considerations. Your mother took one look at the presentation and said, "This isn't what I ordered, send it back." When Storm politely explained that it was the correct dish, just beautifully plated, your mother said, "Don't argue with me, girl, I know what I ordered, and this isn't it." My stomach clenched. I could picture the scene perfectly. My mother using her disappointed teacher voice, the one that had made me feel small countless times during my childhood. Storm handled it professionally, Phoenix continued, offered to have Sage prepare something different. But then, your brother got involved. What did Jasper do? He said, and I quote, "Maybe next time hire staff who speak English as their first language." Storm is from Georgia, by the way, born and raised in Atlanta. She has a master's degree in hospitality management. The casual racism of the comment hit me like a physical blow. Storm was one of our most educated and professional staff members, but because she was a black woman serving their table, Jasper had made assumptions about her background and qualifications. Where is Storm now? Taking a break in the staff room, she was visibly upset, trying not to cry. 20 years in hospitality, and she said she's never been treated like that. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. This was my family, my staff, my resort. Whatever happened next would define not just the remainder of their stay, but the respect my team had for my leadership. What did the rest of the family do? Phoenix's expression darkened further. Delphine actually laughed and said, "Some people just aren't cut out for fine dining service." Your nephew Kai looked mortified and tried to apologize, but the adults shut him down. Uncle Harlow was the only one who seemed uncomfortable with the whole thing. I walked into the dining room with the measured pace of someone who had complete control of the situation, because I did. Every eye in the restaurant turned to watch as I approached the Whitmore table. "Good evening," I said with professional warmth that didn't quite reach my eye. "I understand there was some confusion with your appetizer course." Cordelia looked up with relief. "Oh good, someone with authority." Yes, there was definitely confusion. The young woman who served us seemed, well, let's just say, communication was challenging. Could you describe the specific issue with the dish that was served?" Jasper leaned forward, emboldened by what he perceived as management support. "Look, we're paying premium prices here. We expect a certain level of competence from the staff." "Absolutely, I agree. Competence is essential in hospitality." Our head of housekeeping, who was assisting with service tonight, has 20 years of experience and a master's degree in hospitality management. She's one of our most qualified team members. The color drained from Jasper's face as he realized what I'd just told him. "Perhaps," I continued, "there was a misunderstanding about the dish preparation. Our chef takes great pride in elevating traditional presentation. Sometimes familiar dishes look different when prepared with artistic attention to detail." Delphine's Instagram-ready smile faltered. "We didn't mean anything by it. It's just that sometimes staff can be sensitive." "Our staff are professional educators and hospitality experts," I replied evenly. "They're certainly not sensitive. They're experienced enough to recognize disrespect when they encounter it." Uncle Harlow cleared his throat. "Young lady, I think there may have been some miscommunication all around. Perhaps we could start fresh." "Of course," I said, appreciating that at least one family member was showing leadership. "I'll have our chef prepare fresh appetizers for the table. In the meantime, would you like me to introduce you to some of our senior staff? I think you might be surprised by their qualifications and backgrounds." Celeste shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "That's not necessary. We're sure everyone here is very qualified." "Oh, I insist," I said with a smile that was all teeth. "Transparency builds trust in the service relationship." I gestured toward the bar where our sommelier was preparing wine pairings. "That's Marcus Goldberg, our wine director. He has certifications from the Court of Master Sommeliers and speaks 6 languages. He was previously head sommelier at Le Bernardin in New York." Their heads turned to look at Marcus, a distinguished black man in his 50s, who was, at that moment, explaining tarot concepts to fascinated guests in what sounded like fluent French. Our pastry chef, Indira Patel, trained at Le Cordon Bleu in Paris and worked at the French Laundry before joining us. She's the woman who made your breakfast pastries this morning. I could see Fern connecting dots she didn't want to connect. The perfect croissant she'd raved about on Instagram that morning had been made by an Indian woman whose qualifications far exceeded those of most culinary school graduates. And Storm Washington, the team member who served you tonight, holds a master's degree from Cornell's School of Hotel Administration. She manages a department of 15 people and oversees operations for a property that generates 8-figure annual revenue. The silence at the table was deafening. Around us, other diners had stopped pretending not to listen and were openly watching the interaction. Cordelia attempted to salvage the situation. Well, we certainly appreciate the diversity of your team. It's not diversity, I corrected gently. It's excellence. We hire the best qualified candidates regardless of any other factors. Merit-based selection tends to result in teams that reflect the full spectrum of talent available in the hospitality industry. Young Kai, who had been silent through the entire exchange, suddenly spoke up. I'm really sorry about what happened. That was wrong, and I should have said something. The kid had more integrity at 16 than the rest of the family combined. Thank you, Kai, I said genuinely. That means a great deal. Jasper shot his son a warning look, but Kai held his ground. No, Dad, what you said was racist, and it was embarrassing. These people are taking amazing care of us and we're acting like jerks. Kai, Fern hissed, clearly mortified that their family drama was playing out in public. He's right, Uncle Harlow said quietly, his military bearing rigid with what I recognized as deep shame. We've conducted ourselves poorly tonight. That young woman deserves an apology. The table fell silent again. I could see the family fracturing in real time. Kai and Harlow on one side, recognizing their behavior had been unacceptable, while Jasper, Delphine, and my mother maintained defensive positions. I'll arrange for Storm to receive your apologies if you'd like to offer them, I said diplomatically. In the meantime, would you prefer to continue with dinner service, or would you be more comfortable dining privately in your suites tonight? It was a graceful exit offer and Cordelia grabbed it immediately. Suite service would be lovely, she said with forced brightness. We're all a bit tired from travel. Of course, I'll have Sage prepare something special for in-room dining. Please allow 30 minutes for preparation. As they gathered their belongings to leave, Harlow approached me privately. Miss, he said in a low voice, I need you to know that behavior doesn't represent military values or proper conduct. I'm ashamed of my family tonight. Thank you for saying that, I replied. It takes character to acknowledge when standards haven't been met. He nodded curtly and rejoined the family as they headed toward the elevators. Once they were gone, I went to find Storm in the staff room. She was sitting with Marina and Sage, who were clearly providing emotional support. Storm, I said as I entered, I am so sorry about what happened tonight. She looked up with red-rimmed eyes. In 20 years I've dealt with difficult guests before, but that was unacceptable, I finished firmly. Completely unacceptable, and it won't happen again. What are you going to do? Marina asked. They're your family. I sat down across from Storm, meeting her eyes directly. They're guests at my resort, and they violated our standards of mutual respect. Family or not, that behavior has consequences. Storm wiped her eyes. I don't want to cause problems for you with your relatives. Storm, I said gently, you didn't cause any problems. You were doing your job with the professionalism and excellence I've come to expect from you. What happened tonight revealed character flaws in my family, not shortcomings in your service. Sage leaned forward. So what happens now? I stood up, my decision crystallizing. Now they learned that actions have consequences, and that excellence demands respect. The loyalty test was complete. My family had shown their true values when they thought no one important was watching. My staff had shown theirs by maintaining professionalism in the face of disrespect. Tomorrow, the real education would begin. Wednesday morning arrived with an unusual buzz of activity at Avalon Bay Resort. What my family didn't know was that their behavior the previous evening had become the talk of Celestial Cove's tight-knit hospitality community. Word travels fast in resort towns, especially when it involves disrespect toward well-known and respected staff members. I discovered the extent of the situation when my phone started ringing at 6 a.m., with calls from other local business owners. The first was from Azure Martinez, who owned the boutique hotel down the coast. "I heard what happened to Storm last night," she said without preamble. "That woman has sent us more qualified staff referrals than any recruitment agency. She's pure class." "Who are these people?" "Complicated family situation," I replied carefully. "Well, complicated or not," Marcus Goldberg posted about it on the Hospitality Professionals Forum. "Your family is getting a reputation, and not a good one." That got my attention. Marcus was typically the most discreet person on my staff. If he was posting publicly about guest behavior, the situation had crossed serious professional lines. I quickly checked the Coastal Hospitality Professionals private Facebook group, where I found Marcus's post from 11 p.m. the previous night. 20 years in fine dining, and I'm still shocked by what some people consider acceptable behavior. Watched colleagues get disrespected tonight, based purely on assumptions about their background and education. Reminder: the people serving you have worked harder and studied longer than you might imagine. Respect costs nothing, and reveals everything about your character. The post had 43 comments and counting, mostly from local restaurant managers, hotel staff, and tourism board members. Several people had shared similar experiences, and a few had connected the dots about which property and which guests were involved. The most telling comment came from Elena Shores, director of the Celestial Cove Tourism Board. "Behavior like this reflects poorly on our entire community. Visitors who disrespect local hospitality workers aren't the kind of tourists we want representing our destination in their reviews and recommendations." My phone rang again. This time it was Dr. Cameron Pike, the local newspaper editor who also happened to be Coral's husband. "I'm not calling as a journalist," he clarified immediately. "I'm calling as someone who knows Storm Washington personally. She volunteers with our literacy program and has helped dozens of kids in this community. Whatever happened last night has her really shaken up. I'm handling the situation. Cameron, I'm sure you are, but I think you should know your family's behavior is becoming public knowledge. The Celestial Cove community is small, and people talk. Storm has a lot of friends here." After hanging up, I realized that my family's education was about to expand far beyond the confines of Avalon Bay Resort. They'd insulted a beloved community member in a town where reputation mattered more than money, and respect was earned through character, not credit card. At 8 a.m., I called an emergency staff meeting in our conference room. Every department head was present, along with Storm and several other team members who had witnessed or heard about the previous evening's incident. "I want to address what happened last night," I began, "and discuss how we move forward professionally while maintaining our standards." Phoenix spoke first. "The local hospitality network is rallying around Storm. I've had 3 job offers for her this morning, from competitors who want to poach her away from us." Storm looked surprised. "Really? Really?" Marina confirmed. "Your reputation in this community is sterling. Last night just reminded everyone how much they value your professionalism." I turned to Storm directly, "Which brings me to an important question. How do you want to handle the remainder of this booking? You have every right to request not to interact with these guests again." Storm considered this carefully. "Actually, I'd like to continue serving them, but with backup." "Explain." "I want them to see me being excellent at my job. I want them to watch me demonstrate the professionalism and competence they questioned. But I want witnesses, so if anything similar happens, it's documented." The room fell silent as everyone processed this. Storm wasn't seeking revenge or avoiding conflict. She was choosing to face it head-on with the confidence that her skills would speak for themselves. "Done," I said immediately. "Phoenix, I want you personally overseeing any interaction Storm has with the Whitmore family. River, document everything. If they so much as speak to her dismissively, I want it recorded." Dave raised his hand. "What about their scheduled activities? They have the yacht excursion this afternoon and the wine tasting tomorrow." "Proceed as planned," I replied. "But here's what's going to happen. Every activity, every service, every interaction they have will be delivered by our most qualified, most professional, most impressive staff members. They're about to get a master class in exactly who they chose to disrespect. River looked confused. I thought we were already giving them premium service. We were giving them excellent service, I corrected. Now they're getting legendary service, the kind that gets written about in industry publications and remembered for years. At 10 a.m., the family gathered in the lobby for their yacht excursion, clearly expecting a standard tourist boat ride. Instead, they were met by Captain Noah Stormwind, a former Navy officer who operated the most luxurious charter vessel on the coast. His boat, the Celestial Dream, was a 40-foot yacht that typically rented for $5,000 per day. I watched from my office window as the family boarded, their expressions shifting from casual interest to genuine awe. Captain Stormwind didn't just operate a boat, he provided maritime education, pointing out geological formations, explaining ocean ecosystems, and sharing local history with the authority of someone who'd sailed these waters for 30 years. The photography service I'd arranged was equally impressive. Instead of a standard tourist photographer, I'd hired Wavelength Studios, whose work had been featured in National Geographic and Coastal Living. They would capture professional quality images of the family's excursion, the kind that would make Delphine's Instagram followers question whether she'd somehow stumbled into a celebrity yacht experience. At noon, while the family was still at sea, I received an unexpected visit. Elena Shores from the tourism board had requested a meeting, and she arrived with a serious expression that immediately put me on alert. "We need to discuss the Whitmore situation," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "I've received 3 complaints about their behavior from local business owners." "Complaints about what, specifically?" "Apparently they made some comments at breakfast about the quality of local staff that were overheard by other guests. Then there was the incident at your restaurant last night, and this morning, one of them, a blonde woman, loudly complained at the coffee shop about having to tip service workers who probably don't even speak English." My heart sank. Delphine had apparently learned nothing from the previous evening's experience. Elena continued. "Celestial Cove depends on word-of-mouth tourism and positive reviews. We can't afford to have visitors who actively disrespect our community members and create negative experiences for other tourists." "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything yet, but I want you to know that if this behavior continues, the tourism board will take action. We have protocols for addressing problematic visitors, up to and including requesting they cut their stays short." The irony was breathtaking. My family had come to Celestial Cove expecting a relaxing vacation, where they could feel superior to the local population. Instead, their behavior was putting them at risk of being asked to leave by the very community they'd dismissed. "I appreciate you bringing this to my attention," I said carefully. "I'll address it with the guests directly." Elena stood to leave, then paused at the door. "You know, there's something else you should be aware of. Storm Washington called me this morning. She didn't want to cause problems for your resort, but she felt the tourism board should know about last night's incident in case it affected our community reputation. I told her that her reputation in this community is impeccable, and that anyone who questions her professionalism or background is revealing their own ignorance, not her inadequacy." Elena's smile was sharp. "I also mentioned that we keep informal lists of problematic visitors, and that negative behavior tends to follow people from destination to destination." After Elena left, I sat in my office processing the implications. My family's education was no longer confined to Avalon Bay Resort. They were getting a real-time lesson in how small communities protect their own and how reputation travels faster than social media in close-knit towns. The yacht returned at 3 p.m., and I watched the family disembark with the satisfied expressions of people who'd just experienced something extraordinary. Captain Stormwind had clearly delivered the kind of maritime experience that created lifelong memory. As they walked back toward the resort, chattering excitedly about dolphins and sunset photography, I realized they still had no idea that their behavior was being watched, discussed, and documented by an entire community. Tomorrow's wine tasting would introduce them to Celestial Cove's most respected vintners and sommeliers. If they chose to continue displaying the same attitudes, they would discover that this small coastal town had ways of making visitors understand that respect was not optional. It was required. Thursday evening's wine tasting was where everything came crashing down. What was supposed to be an elegant educational experience featuring Celestial Cove's premier vintners became the moment my family's entire facade collapsed in the most public, devastating way possible. The event was held in our private vineyard pavilion, a glass-walled space overlooking the ocean that we typically reserved for intimate gatherings of 20 people or fewer. I had arranged for 3 of the region's most respected wine experts to guide the family through a curated tasting of local vintages, each paired with artisanal cheeses and small plates from Sage's kitchen. At 6 p.m., the family gathered in the pavilion, clearly impressed by the setting. The golden hour light streaming through the glass created an almost ethereal atmosphere, and the view of the vineyard rolling down to the ocean was genuinely breathtaking. Delphine was already posing for photos, while Jasper examined the wine list with the concentrated expression of someone trying to appear knowledgeable. Our first presenter was Sofia Ramirez, a master sommelier, who owned 3 award-winning wineries in the valley. She approached the family with the warm professionalism that had made her a favorite among wine enthusiasts and critics alike. "Good evening," Sofia began, her slight accent adding elegance to her words. "I'm Sofia Ramirez and I'll be guiding you through some of our region's most exceptional vintages tonight. We'll start with a crisp Sauvignon Blanc that showcases the unique terroir of our coastal climate." I was positioned at a small table in the corner, ostensibly reviewing the evening's logistics, but actually watching for any signs of the behavior that had become my family's signature. Everything started smoothly. Sofia's presentation was flawless, her knowledge impressive, and the wines were genuinely exceptional. The first crack appeared 20 minutes into the tasting when Sofia explained the biodynamic farming practices used by one of the local vineyards. "Biodynamic?" Jasper interrupted with a laugh. "That's just fancy marketing for organic, right? Come on, we're not tourists who fall for every trendy label." Sofia paused gracefully. "Actually, biodynamic farming involves specific astronomical and seasonal considerations that go well beyond organic certification. It's a comprehensive philosophical approach that philosophy." Delphine cut in. "We're talking about wine, not religion. Can we just focus on what tastes good?" I watched Sofia's professional smile tighten almost imperceptibly. She'd dealt with dismissive guests before, but rarely in such an intimate setting where education was the primary goal. "Of course," Sofia replied smoothly, "taste is ultimately personal. However, understanding the winemaking process often enhances appreciation of the final product." The second presenter, James Chen, arrived as Sofia was finishing her section. James was a third-generation vintner whose family had been making wine in Celestial Cove since his expertise in traditional winemaking techniques had earned him recognition from Wine Spectator and Food and Wine magazines. The Chen family has been perfecting these techniques for over 70 years, Sofia said by way of introduction. James will be sharing some wines that represent decades of refinement and tradition. My mother perked up at the mention of tradition. "How wonderful. It's so nice to see families maintaining their heritage. Where is your family from originally, dear?" James smiled politely. "My grandfather emigrated from Guangdong province in 1951. He started with a small vineyard and—" "Oh," Cordelia interrupted, her tone shifting noticeably, "so you're not— I mean, how long has your family been making wine? In America, I mean." The question hung in the air like poison. James had just told her his family had been making wine in this region for over 70 years, but apparently that wasn't American enough for my mother's definition of traditional winemaking. "Since 1952, James replied evenly, though I could see tension creeping into his posture. 3 generations of continuous operation here in Celestial Cove." My mother said, as if she were processing this information through some internal filter. "And you learned from European techniques?" Or, she was questioning the legitimacy of his expertise based purely on his ethnicity, despite his family having deeper roots in local winemaking than most of the region's celebrated vintners. That's when Delphine made it worse. "You know what?" she said, pulling out her phone. "I'm going to Google this place. I want to make sure we're getting authentic local wine, not some, well, you know." She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Everyone in the room understood exactly what she meant. James set down his wine glass carefully. "Ma'am, the Chen family vineyards have won more regional awards than any other winery in Celestial Cove. Our 2019 Pinot Noir was rated 94 points by Wine Spectator. We've been featured in I'm sure you're very successful, Jasper interrupted. It's just that when we're paying premium prices for a local experience, we expect something more traditional. That was the moment I stood up. I crossed the pavilion with measured steps, every eye in the room following my movement. The family looked up expectantly, clearly assuming I was coming to manage the situation in their favor, to smooth over whatever miscommunication had occurred. James, I said, extending my hand to the Vinter, I apologize for the interruption to your presentation. Would you mind if I addressed my guests briefly? James shook my hand, his expression carefully controlled. Of course. I turned to face my family, who were watching with expressions of polite curiosity mixed with mild irritation at the delay. I think there's been a misunderstanding that I need to clarify, I began, my voice carrying clearly in the glass-enclosed space. Mr. Chen represents one of the most respected winemaking families in this region. His expertise and credentials are impeccable. Oh, we're sure he's very qualified, my mother said dismissively. It's just that we were hoping for more of an authentic local experience. This is the authentic local experience, I replied. James Chen's family has been making award-winning wine in Celestial Cove longer than most families have lived here. His wines are served at the governor's mansion and featured in Michelin-starred restaurants. Delphine looked up from her phone. But we wanted traditional American winemaking techniques, not whatever this is. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see Sophia and James exchanging glances, their professional composure barely containing their shock at the blatant xenophobia being displayed. Traditional American winemaking, I repeated slowly. You do realize that winemaking came to America through immigration, don't you? Every technique, every tradition, every grape variety was brought here by people from somewhere else. Jasper's face was reddening. Look, we don't need a history lesson. We just want what we paid for. And what exactly did you pay for? Premium service, expert guidance, not some lecture about diversity or whatever this is turning into. That's when I made the decision that changed everything. James, Sophia, I said, turning to the two wine experts, would you mind giving us a few minutes? I think my guests and I need to have a private conversation. After the Vinters left, I remained standing while my family stayed seated, the power dynamic in the room suddenly, unmistakably clear. You want to know what you paid for? I said quietly. You paid for a week at Avalon Bay Resort. You paid for services provided by some of the most qualified, professional and talented people in the hospitality industry. You paid for expertise, excellence, and attention to detail that you clearly don't understand or appreciate. Cordelia looked confused. Darling, what are you talking about? We're just trying to have a nice evening. No, I said firmly. You're trying to have an evening where everyone who serves you looks like you, sounds like you, and validates your assumptions about who deserves respect and who doesn't. The family exchanged glances, clearly wondering if I had overstepped some boundary they thought protected them from accountability. Since you arrived, I continued, you've insulted my head of housekeeping because of her race. You've dismissed my chef because of her nationality. You've questioned my sommelier's expertise because of his accent. And tonight, you've implied that a third-generation American Vinter isn't traditional enough for your tastes. Delphine's mouth fell open. Your staff? What do you mean, your staff? And there it was, the moment I'd been building toward all week. I mean my staff, I said clearly, the people who work for me, at my resort, which I own. The silence that followed was absolute. Outside the glass walls, I could see other resort guests walking the grounds, completely unaware that inside the pavilion, my family's entire understanding of reality was crumbling. You own this place. Jasper's voice was barely above a whisper. Every acre, every building, every wine glass you're drinking from. My mother's face had gone completely white. But you said you worked here. I do work here. I work here as the owner, operator, and executive decision-maker of a $15 million hospitality business that employs 43 people and generates more revenue in a year than you'll see in your lifetime. The words hung in the air like a verdict. 32 years of dismissal, condescension and exclusion crystallized into this single moment of absolute clarity. They had excluded me from their family vacation, and booked it at my resort. They had spent the week treating my staff, people I respected and valued, with casual disrespect, while assuming I was powerless to do anything about it. They had been wrong about everything. The aftermath of the revelation was unlike anything I could have prepared for. For 15 minutes nobody spoke. My family sat frozen in their chairs, wine glasses untouched, staring at me as if I'd suddenly sprouted wings, or spoken in ancient Greek. Delphine was the first to break the silence, her voice cracking. "This is some kind of joke, right? You're not actually— I mean, you can't actually own this place. Would you like to see the property deed?" I asked calmly. "Or perhaps the business registration documents. They're all filed with the county under my name." Jasper's face had gone through several color changes, settling on a sickly gray. But how could you afford something like this? You've never had any real money." "I've had plenty of real money, Jasper. You just chose to believe I did." My mother finally found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "All this time, when we thought you were working here as an employee, you were the owner?" "Yes." "Watching us? Judging us?" "No, Mother. Serving yous, giving you the best vacation experience my resort could provide." Which, based on your enthusiastic Instagram posts and repeated comments about the incredible service, I'd say was successful. Celeste, who had been quiet through most of the evening, suddenly burst into tears. "Oh God, we've been so awful. The things we said about your staff, about the people who work for you." "Yes," I agreed, simply. "You have been awful." Fern was frantically typing on her phone. "I'm looking up this resort online, and there's your photo, right there on the About the Owner page. How did we miss this? Because you never bothered to research where you were staying. You assumed it was just some random resort, and that I was just some random employee." Uncle Harlow, who had maintained his military bearing even through his obvious shock, cleared his throat. "Young lady, I need to ask you directly, how long have you owned this establishment?" 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. "And in all that time, not once did you tell your family about this achievement?" I met his steady gaze. "I tried to, Uncle Harlow. Remember 3 years ago at Christmas dinner? I mentioned purchasing a coastal property." Jasper laughed and said I was playing entrepreneur again. Delphine patted my head and called it a fun little project. Mother changed the subject to discuss Jasper's latest promotion. The memory hung in the air like an accusation. I could see them each recalling that conversation, recognizing their dismissive responses, understanding for the first time what they had actually dismissed. Cordelia's voice was trembling. We thought you were exaggerating, making things sound bigger than they were. You always did have such an active imagination." "My active imagination generated $15 million in property value and employs 43 people, Mother. Some of whom you've spent this week insulting based on their race, accent, or national origin." That's when Jasper exploded. "This is insane," he shouted, standing up so abruptly his chair toppled backward. "You set us up. You knew we didn't know, and you let us make fools of ourselves." "I set you up." I remained seated, my voice level. "Jasper, you excluded me from a family vacation and booked it at my business. I didn't set anything up. I just didn't correct your assumptions. You should have told us immediately." "Why?" "So you could pretend to respect me for a week, so you could fake being impressed with my success, so you could spend 7 days walking on eggshells instead of showing me who you really are." Delphine was crying now too. "We never meant. We didn't know. You didn't know I owned the resort, but you knew exactly how you wanted to treat the people who served you. You knew exactly what you thought about Storm's qualifications, Sophia's expertise, and James's legitimacy. My ownership doesn't change the character you displayed." Phoenix appeared at the pavilion entrance, his expression carefully neutral. "Excuse me. I apologize for the interruption, but we have a situation that requires immediate attention." I stood, grateful for the reprieve. "What's happening?" "Elena Shores from the tourism board is here with 2 other board members. They're requesting an emergency meeting about guest conduct violation." The blood drained from Jasper's face. Guest conduct violations. Phoenix's expression remained professionally blank. "Apparently, there have been multiple reports from local businesses about inappropriate behavior toward service staff." The tourism board has protocols for addressing visitors who create negative experiences for the community. I looked at my family, who were now staring at Phoenix with growing horror. Give me 5 minutes, I told Phoenix, then please show them to my office. After Phoenix left, the pavilion fell silent again. This time the silence was different, heavier, charged with the recognition that their behavior had consequences beyond hurt feelings. What does that mean? Fern whispered. Guest conduct violation. It means, I explained, that your behavior toward local residents and service workers has been noticed, documented, and reported. Celestial Cove is a small community that depends on tourism, but they don't tolerate visitors who disrespect their residents. Uncle Harlow's military training kicked in. What are the potential consequences? They can request that problematic guests cut their stays short. They can also place visitors on a community watch list that makes future bookings in the area difficult. Cordelia looked stricken. But we've been nothing but polite. Mother, you question James Chen's authenticity as an American winemaker because of his ethnicity. Yesterday you lectured Storm about proper service standards while knowing nothing about her qualification. Delphine made racist comments at the coffee shop this morning that were overheard by other tourists. I never said anything racist, Delphine protested. You complained loudly about having to tip service workers who probably don't even speak English. In a community where most of the service workers are multilingual locals who've lived here their entire lives, the reality of their situation was finally sinking in. They hadn't just embarrassed themselves in front of me, they'd embarrassed themselves in front of an entire community that had the power to make their remaining vacation extremely uncomfortable. Kai, who had been silent through the entire revelation, finally spoke up. What can we do to fix this? It was the first time all week that anyone in my family had asked how to repair damage rather than minimize consequences. That depends, I said, on whether you're willing to acknowledge that your behavior was wrong, not just inconvenient. Harlow straightened his shoulder. Speaking for myself, my conduct this week has been inexcusable. I allowed family loyalty to override basic standards of respect and courtesy. I'm prepared to make personal apologies to anyone I offended. Me too, Kai added immediately. I should have spoken up earlier. I knew what was happening was wrong. I looked at the rest of my family. Jasper was staring at his hands. Delphine was wiping her eyes. My mother looked like she was trying to disappear into her chair. Celeste and Fern were exchanging glances, clearly processing the implications of everything they'd witnessed. The tourism board meeting starts in 5 minutes, I said. You have a choice. You can continue to justify your behavior and likely be asked to leave Celestial Cove tomorrow morning, or you can acknowledge that you've acted poorly and commit to making genuine amends. What kind of amends? Jasper asked quietly. Personal apologies to every staff member you insulted, public acknowledgement that your assumptions about people's qualifications and backgrounds were wrong, and a significant contribution to the Celestial Cove Community Development Fund, which supports local education and hospitality training programs. I paused, looking at each of them in turn. But most importantly, you need to understand that this isn't about saving face or avoiding consequence. This is about recognizing that the people you've dismissed and disrespected are valuable human beings who deserve your respect regardless of whether I own this resort or not. The silence stretched for nearly a minute before Harlow spoke. I'll make the apologies and the contribution, and I'll do it because it's right, not because it's convenient. One by one, the rest of the family nodded agreement. Even Jasper, though his expressions suggested he was motivated more by damage control than genuine remorse. As we prepared to face the tourism board, I realized that regardless of what happened in the next hour, my family would never see me the same way again. The excluded daughter had become the person in charge of their fate. The education was complete. Whether they'd learned anything meaningful from it remained to be seen. 6 months later, I stood in the same vineyard pavilion where my family's world had imploded, watching Luna practice her presentation for the resort's new junior hospitality program. She was explaining the principles of respectful service to a group of local teenagers, her confidence radiating as she discussed the importance of treating every person with dignity regardless of their background or position. Remember, she said in her clear 9-year-old voice, excellence in hospitality means seeing each guest as a whole person, not just making assumptions based on how they look or sound. Watching her, I reflected on how dramatically everything had changed since that Thursday evening revelation. The tourism board meeting had been a watershed moment, not just for my family's vacation, but for their entire understanding of community respect and accountability. Alina Shores and her board members had been thorough but fair. They documented every reported incident, from the restaurant confrontation with Storm, to Delphine's coffee shop comments, to the dismissive treatment of the wine experts. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Uncle Harlow had stepped forward first, offering a formal apology that demonstrated the leadership skills that had made him successful in the military. His words were specific, acknowledging each incident and taking personal responsibility without making excuses. The board members had been visibly moved by his sincerity. Kai had followed, his teenage voice cracking with emotion as he apologized for not speaking up sooner. "I knew it was wrong," he'd said. "I should have been braver about standing up for what's right." The others had offered apologies too, though with varying degrees of authenticity. Jasper's had sounded rehearsed. Delphine's had been interrupted by tears that seemed more about her embarrassment than genuine remorse. And my mother's had carried undertones of confusion, as if she still didn't entirely understand what she'd done wrong. But the most significant moment had come when Storm herself had addressed the board. "I appreciate the apologies," she'd said with characteristic grace, "but what matters most is that behavior changes. Words are important, but actions prove whether someone has actually learned from their mistakes." The tourism board had allowed the family to complete their stay with conditions: mandatory attendance at a cultural sensitivity workshop, written apologies to every staff member they disrespected, and a $10,000 contribution to the Community Development Fund. Most importantly, they would be on a 3-year probationary status for any future visits to Celestial Cove businesses. The real transformation, however, had happened in the months that followed. Harlow had become a regular visitor to Avalon Bay Resort, not as a guest but as a volunteer mentor for our staff development programs. His military experience with diverse teams had proven invaluable in helping young hospitality workers build confidence and leadership skill. He'd also become one of Luna's biggest champions, treating her with the kind of grandfatherly pride that my own father had never shown. Kai had surprised everyone by writing a detailed essay about the experience for his high school sociology class. His teacher had been so impressed that she'd asked permission to share it at an educational conference about addressing teenage prejudice. Kai had agreed, on the condition that he could personally present it and answer questions. He'd already been accepted to college with plans to study hospitality management and social justice. The changes in the others had been more subtle but still significant. Jasper had quietly enrolled in diversity and inclusion training at his accounting firm, and had recommended Avalon Bay Resort to 3 corporate clients for executive retreat. He'd never explicitly apologized to me for a lifetime of dismissive comments, but he'd started asking genuine questions about my business and listening to the answers without condescension. Delphine had become one of our most effective social media advocates, using her platform to highlight the talented staff at various Celestial Cove businesses. Her posts now included respectful interviews with local workers, showcasing their expertise and background. She'd learned to use her influence for education rather than just aesthetics. Even my mother had shown growth, though perhaps the most grudgingly. She'd started volunteering with Storm's literacy program, initially as a way to make amends but gradually developing genuine relationships with the families they serve. Her teacher voice had found a new purpose in helping adults develop reading skills, and she'd discovered that mentoring was more fulfilling than managing. The most profound change had been in my relationship with Luna. She'd witnessed the entire experience through our careful conversations afterward, and it had taught her lessons about standing up for principles that no textbook could have provided. "Mama," she'd said one evening as we walked to the beach behind our house, "why didn't your family understand how successful you were?" Sometimes I'd replied, "People only see what they expect to see." They had decided I was unsuccessful so they couldn't recognize success when it was right in front of them. But that doesn't make sense. Success isn't invisible. "No, sweetheart, it's not. But sometimes people choose not to see it, because it would force them to change their ideas about someone." Luna had pondered this for a moment. "So they had to learn to see you differently. They had to learn to see everyone differently." The business had thrived beyond my wildest expectations. The story of the family reunion revelation had become somewhat legendary in hospitality circles, not as a tale of revenge but as an example of maintaining professional standards under personal pressure. We'd received inquiries from management schools wanting to study our approach to difficult guest situations, and several other resort owners had implemented similar staff protection protocols. More importantly, Avalon Bay Resort had become a destination specifically sought out by travelers who valued diversity, respect, and authentic cultural experiences. Our staff retention had improved dramatically as word spread that we prioritized employee dignity alongside guest satisfaction. Storm had been promoted to Director of Operations, a role she'd accepted with typical grace and competence. "You know," she'd told me during her promotion meeting, "that awful night turned out to be a gift. It showed me exactly the kind of leader you are when things get difficult." The final piece of transformation had come just last month, when I'd received an unexpected call from Elena Shores. "I wanted you to know," she'd said, "that your family's probationary period has been officially lifted." Uncle Harlow's volunteer work and Kai's community involvement have impressed the entire board. They've proven that people can genuinely change when they're committed to growth. That evening, as Luna finished her presentation to the junior hospitality group, I felt a deep sense of completion. The excluded daughter had become a respected business leader. The dismissed sister had built something that commanded professional admiration. The underestimated family member had created a legacy that would outlast any vacation. But most importantly, the woman who had been told she wasn't family material had raised a daughter who understood that real family is built on respect, support, and shared values rather than shared DNA. Luna approached me as the teenagers dispersed, her face glowing with accomplishment. "How did I do, Mama?" "You were perfect," I said, hugging her close. "You spoke about dignity and respect, like someone who truly understands what those words mean." "I learned from watching you," she replied simply. As we walked back toward the resort, I thought about that midnight text message that had arrived 10 months ago. "I'm Dennis's next wife," it had said, "changing one woman's life forever." But my story had been different. My midnight revelation had been Avalon Bay Resort confirmed. "Can't wait for our family reunion." Sometimes the worst betrayal leads to the best education. Sometimes being excluded from someone else's story allows you to write your own. And sometimes the people who try to make you feel small end up proving just how large you've actually become. The excluded daughter had found her family after all. She'd built it herself, one respectful relationship at a time, in a place where everyone belonged, and everyone mattered. And that was worth more than any vacation they could have planned without her. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.